Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to wisdom, warrior Manjushri, homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in 1,000,000 eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. Now we will teach the words of my perfect teacher. In the words of my perfect teacher, we are now teaching how to follow a spiritual teacher. The first topic previously explained how to examine a teacher. A teacher who possesses the proper qualifications should be followed. A teacher who lacks proper qualifications should not be approached or followed, regardless of circumstances. This has been unanimously taught by the Buddha and all great masters. Therefore, in the process of following a teacher and practicing, we should conduct ourselves properly and correctly. Today we discuss how to follow a teacher, which was explained before. After examining the teacher, one can then proceed to follow them. What we call following primarily means following through the Dharma, listening to teachings from the teacher, having the teacher transmit the Dharma to me. After receiving the teachings, this connection is established. Now, many people in the world think that following a teacher means the teacher has verbally acknowledged you as my disciple. The disciple also says to the teacher, "Teacher, can you please accept me? Can you please accept me as your disciple?" When the teacher is in a good mood, he agrees. When in a bad mood, he temporarily doesn't agree. Later, when the teacher has agreed, there's great joy upon agreement. Today, the teacher has agreed to accept me as his disciple. How wonderful! We should have a good meal today because the teacher has accepted me. The boundary of acceptance for many people now is merely the teacher's verbal permission, like a worldly promise. But perhaps great masters, through their blessings and incomparable wisdom, may have such methods of acceptance which we don't exclude. However, I think after studying many sutras and treatises, what is called following a teacher in the sutras and treatises should be establishing a connection through the Dharma, with the teacher transmitting teachings and oneself receiving them. Only after receiving them is the relationship of following established. Now, there are some people who have received empowerments from teachers, have also received some Buddhist teachings, obtained pith instructions and advice, but they don't consider this a form of following at all. They think following is something else entirely. Some have received many teachings from teachers, but still don't acknowledge them as their teacher. Their teacher is someone from whom they've never received any teachings, someone who quietly gave them verbal acknowledgement. I am your teacher, you are my disciple. In this way, perhaps for those of sharp faculties, at the beginning, for example, like Venerable Kashyapa before the Buddha said, "You are my Shravaka." Kashyapa said, "You are my teacher." Through this relationship, those of sharp faculties also obtain the vow essence. This is mentioned in the Vinaya. Perhaps now many teachers and disciples are all like in the Buddha's time, becoming sharp-facultied beings. Mutually acknowledging each other in this way is sufficient. The actual transmission of Buddhist sutras and treatises, they don't consider this a relationship of following. This problem is very common in many cities. Therefore, regarding this issue, I hope everyone present should sharpen your wisdom eye and carefully study the sutras and treatises. What exactly does it mean to follow a teacher? This question must be examined. How should one treat the teacher when following? This is also explained here. When following, one should follow with a respectful mind. The method of following should be through obtaining virtue. The boundary of following, I believe, is receiving the Dharma. The Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma also states, if one explains even one verse of virtuous Dharma to another, then one becomes a good guide to be revered by sentient beings. If someone has proclaimed even one verse of virtuous Dharma to another, then that person should be called a teacher, called a spiritual friend at that time. This disciple, this sentient being, should respect them. From that time onward, one should respect them. It should be different from the previous relationship. For example, if today I have received more than one verse of virtuous Dharma from this teacher, then we should have the same reverence for the Dharma and for our fundamental teacher, and regard this spiritual friend as our own guide. We can treat them this way, which is very important. Otherwise, I think if we follow a teacher through other relationships, it might not conform to Buddhist doctrine. So how should one follow? Just as the Flower Ornament Sutra states, "Good son, you should regard yourself as a sick person." This is taught in volume 33 of the Flower Ornament Sutra. You should regard your own body as having the thought of illness and suffering. Regard the spiritual friend as the thought of a physician king. Regard the spoken Dharma as the thought of good medicine. Regard the practice as the thought of curing illness. This has been explained through analogy and meaning. One's own body has become ill. Regarding one's own body as a patient, thinking of removing illness and suffering. Regarding the spiritual friend, we think, when I'm ill, I must rely on a doctor. Other than doctors, some other intellectuals. Are they useful? They are not useful. Then the Dharma spoken by the teacher must be thought of as wonderful medicine. Practice should remove illness and suffering. This is very crucial. Now, many people initially follow spiritual friends saying, "This is my teacher, I want to follow them," but they don't take the Dharma. The teacher speaks. They don't regard the teacher as a physician. They don't regard their own practice as removing illness. If these four thoughts are reversed, like the 6 thoughts mentioned in the precious treasury of Pith instructions, if these thoughts are reversed, then our practice truly cannot succeed. Now, some people receive one teaching from a certain teacher, and from then on, never think about the Dharma he taught. They never think about treating their afflictive illness. They never practice at all. We know that if I go to the hospital and the doctor prescribes medicine, it's useless if you don't take it. If you just look at the doctor and smile at them, and the doctor also just looks at you. Examining what illness you have, opening your eyes, like some traditional Chinese medicine doctors say, "Open your mouth. Ah, yes, 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 good, 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 you can go back now." That's fine. In that case, perhaps he is a special kind of doctor who might have some uncommon blessing for you. Such doctors are very rare. Otherwise, I think doctors must prescribe medicine or teach you their methods, and after teaching you, you should use them. Only then can our illnesses be removed, other than doctors. If you look for someone else, for example, if your stomach is particularly painful and you immediately go to a scientific laboratory or other places to find a professor, if your stomach hurts, they won't examine you at all. Similarly, the illness of our mind, the illness of mental afflictions, including now in the 21st century of humanity, many super advanced scientific technologies have no way to eliminate them. There's no way to eliminate the particularly terrifying afflictive illnesses in sentient beings' minds. This is something that any intellectual, any wise person also has no way to handle. In this regard, for them it is very confusing. Therefore, some sentient beings are also very pitiful in this world. They sometimes take refuge in other religions, sometimes take refuge in some other worldly so-called Qigong masters or other intellectuals. They can temporarily provide you with some comfort and happiness. This should be attainable, but ultimately being liberated from the great ocean of samsara, or truly escaping from birth, aging, sickness, and death, they have no way to help. So regarding following spiritual friends, if you don't want liberation, that's another matter. If you want liberation, there is hope only before spiritual friends. If you don't follow spiritual friends, no matter how wise, capable, or brave you are, there's no way. Since ancient times, history has been the same. There have been many people of superior wisdom in the world, but if they want liberation without following spiritual friends, it's absolutely impossible to achieve. Therefore, this is also explained here through analogies and meanings. It has already been proclaimed. We should be like patients afflicted with serious illness, relying on skillful, renowned doctors. This way of thinking is one kind of thought, and like travelers on dangerous paths relying on brave escorts. If it's particularly frightening and you need to walk a stretch of road without a brave escort, you wouldn't dare to walk. Now in some places, we hear there are bandits and fierce beasts. In such cases, some people, not to mention going alone, even drivers don't dare to drive at night, or they arrange for several vehicles to travel together. So in our worldly existence, this also happens. If you need to pass through a particularly terrifying, dangerous zone, then you need an escort. Or when encountering enemies, bandits, wild beasts, and other terrifying harms, relying on companions who can rescue from difficulties is also very important. In the middle of the journey, There are tigers, fierce beasts, particularly frightening places or places with bandits and so forth. You need a strong person. You need an armed escort. To retrieve treasures from the great ocean, one must rely on a merchant captain. To reach the other shore of a river, boat, passengers definitely need a helmsman. To escape the fears of birth, death, and afflictions, one must rely on teachers and spiritual friends who possess the ability to rescue. Many of us in samsara are unwilling to continue suffering. If you truly want to escape such samsara, you greatly need someone with wisdom, compassion, and ability, such a teacher. Like Buddha Shakyamuni, someone who completely possesses wisdom, compassion, and power may not necessarily be found in this degenerate age. But among us humans, there are those with some compassion, some wisdom, and some ability who can directly or indirectly change our mind stream. Such a teacher we must definitely follow. Therefore, Venerable Jigme Lingpa's Treasury of Precious Qualities also states, the above methods of following a teacher should be like this, like the sick relying on doctors, travelers relying on escorts, the fearful relying on friends, merchants relying on captains, all boat passengers relying on helmsmen, those who fear birth, death, and confusion should rely on teachers. Most importantly, we who are afraid and want to attain liberation from the cycle of birth and death, such a person must first seek a teacher. So now in our big cities, some are truly following teachers. Some may now truly want to seek a teacher, but going to other places may not necessarily find one truly. But through various means, having already obtained the teacher's instructions, I think obtaining any true spiritual friend's instructions. Actually, following spiritual friends doesn't necessarily mean being with the teacher every day, following every step the teacher takes, sitting beside them when the teacher sits foolishly watching beside them when the teacher eats. This is not necessarily called following. What I consider the purpose of following to be is to fully obtain the wisdom and compassion from the teacher's mind stream, to obtain all of it oneself, the Buddhist doctrines that the teacher understands, the three trainings of discipline, concentration, and wisdom to gradually enable the lineage disciples to obtain these doctrines. This kind of method is called following, so I think following doesn't necessarily require you to always stay with the teacher. Some people are like this. Constantly accompanying the teacher is called following. The teacher doesn't accept me because when the teacher goes out, they don't take me. I'm very pained. Haven't I already followed the teacher? Why don't you take me? Being taken along is not necessarily following. I think what is the purpose of following? It's not necessarily that the teacher takes you everywhere. This doesn't necessarily have real meaning. So now many people rely on teachers in different ways. Some, especially in this current era, I think truly the instructions of some spiritual friends from before now, through various means, let many people know about Buddhist teachings such as the precious human life, impermanence of life, how to practice in the morning when getting up, how to practice in the evening during the day, in daily life, how to integrate the spirit of Buddhism into daily life. All these principles can be fully understood. If understood, this is the doctrine of following a teacher. In the Buddha's time, the Buddha couldn't possibly, as we often see in the Buddha's biographies, those truly brought along by the Buddha's side. Venerable Ananda, Venerable Kashyapa, Venerable Maudgalyayana, just a few people. But if you look at each of the Buddha's sutras, sometimes there are 2,500 retinues, sometimes 250 retinues, each disciple always following the Buddha. Necessarily, do you need me, Buddha, to pour tea for you? Do you need me, Buddha, to be very close to you? So now when some people approach spiritual friends, they think they must sit particularly close living and sleeping together with the teacher is true following. I don't think it's like this. What we call following is truly the teacher's secret intention, the doctrines that the teacher understands from the sutras or treatises, enabling the lineage disciples to all receive them. Of course, in this regard, if you have faith, as mentioned before, following many teachers is also possible. But some Dharma teachers in different occasions also often say following spiritual friends. Just one is sufficient. Practice cannot be mixed up. Just practicing one Dharma method is sufficient. When following spiritual friends, one can only follow one. According to some ancient traditions, one student follows one teacher. This method is very good. Otherwise, if you follow too many, hearing too much, thinking too much, afflictions become more, then wisdom disappears, and ultimately one cannot attain accomplishment. Some Dharma teachers also emphasize one person following one teacher, but later many wise ones and great masters also quoted the Flower Ornament Sutra. For example, in the Flower Ornament Sutra, Suddhana's 53 visits, and in the 80 fascicle Avatamsaka Sutra, it speaks of following 110 spiritual friends. In some versions of the Flower Ornament Sutra, it already speaks of following countless spiritual friends. So quoting these scriptural proofs, they refuted some individual teachers' viewpoints. I think you cannot generalize that. One cannot follow many people. Requiring all people, when following teachers, to only have one, I think this also cannot be said. You also cannot say that one disciple following one teacher is wrong and must follow many. This also cannot be said. Each sentient being's faculties and each person's situation should be different. Some people are suitable for following many spiritual friends because their afflictions and conceptual thoughts may not necessarily be tamed by one teacher. For some, if they follow too many, their mind might truly become confused, or afflictions increase. This teacher is also unhappy, that teacher is also unhappy. Many people think, I must never follow too many in the future. I've also encountered some Dharma friends before. Now many teachers are unhappy with me. I will never follow any teacher in the future. I'll just practice alone and achieve the Pratyeka Buddha fruition by myself. There are also such statements, but I think each person's situation is different. But it's necessary if you want to attain liberation from samsara. You must follow a teacher. Following a teacher is absolutely necessary. Without following, attaining liberation from samsara is very difficult. The conditions a disciple should possess are these several. First is donning the great armor of diligence, even encountering life-threatening danger, never violating the teacher's and spiritual friend's wishes. First, a disciple should have this quality. Even if I lose my body and life, I will not violate the spiritual friend's wishes. Second, wisdom should be firm, not easily shaken. One's mood should not change due to temporarily appearing obstacles. Temporarily, one day the teacher is a bit unhappy, or one day doing something. The relationship with Dharma friends is not very good over a small matter. Then oneself thinks, the connection is finished, or happiness has already bid farewell. Now in society, there are various sayings about relationships with teachers. Temporarily, like the relationship with a general manager in a company, or like a relationship with a leader. With worldly leaders, when relationship is good, you can live together with them. If the relationship is not good, you can just leave casually. When leaving, you use various attitudes. If you don't need to seek his help later, you can abuse him with various attitudes. But in our Buddhism, following spiritual friends is truly not like this. If you violate a teacher's teachings and abandon a teacher, whether you can achieve accomplishment by following many other teachers is very difficult. Some people think this is a tantric teaching, that this problem doesn't exist in the Sutrayana. I don't accept such people's statements, because if you just look carefully, examine in detail without mentioning others, just look carefully at the Flower Ornament Sutra. In the Flower Ornament Sutra, everywhere it discusses following spiritual friends. What kind of mental attitude, what kind of behavior should be clearly visible? So this is not a special tantric view of regarding the teacher as a Buddha. This is not a tantric teaching. In Mahayana sutras that are slightly closer to the definitive meaning, this is repeatedly emphasized, so we should know how to obtain accomplishment. The conditions for such attainment depend on spiritual friends. Now, who said this? This is what the Buddha told us, not what some other person said. So if we abandon all of the Buddha's teachings, then perhaps there could be such statements. Otherwise, I think there are no other statements. So when following spiritual friends, one's mood must be stable. One cannot immediately make decisions and pack up whenever a small matter arises. It's not working now, the connection is finished. Then immediately pack things up and look for the bus. Temporarily appearing obstacles cannot change one's mind. Third is serving the teacher, having the spirit to go through fire and water in serving the teacher. That is to say, not sparing one's life to work for the teacher. For the teacher, even sacrificing one's life willingly, with such a spirit, through the power of Dharmata, one naturally obtains true mind transmission blessings in one's mind stream. being slightly tired or suffering a bit or encountering the slightest obstacles, immediately abandoning the teacher, especially in the process of serving the teacher. Some temporary obstacles may appear. We often see some people who have served teachers for many years and their own faith and their Dharma propagation activities become increasingly vast. Some think that perhaps in the process of following a teacher, following a teacher may not be very important. I'll start my own separate Buddhist enterprise. My work might surpass this teacher. As a result, not only can they not succeed, some may even find that their individual life is in a difficult situation. Such phenomena also exist. Actually, I think if there's truly a spiritual friend in the process of Dharma propagation and benefiting beings, if some people unite with the teacher's intentions and the teacher's aspirations and then work together, it might be very good conditions for oneself to benefit sentient beings. For example, I've often thought about working for the teacher's activities if I relied solely on my own ability to help sentient beings. I'm afraid now, not to mention limitless sentient beings, helping even individual sentient beings with my own power would be quite difficult. But relying on the teacher, through the teacher's conditions, through the teacher's blessings, and combining with his vast activities, there should be very good conditions. I remember it should be stated in the Flower Ornament Sutra, when following a teacher, one should have 10 kinds of minds. What are these 10 minds? First is the attendant mind, the mind of being an attendant and serving. One should always have the mind of serving the teacher toward the teacher. Second is the joyful mind, doing anything for the teacher, or when serving and attending to the teacher, not being gloomy all day, not having afflicted and painful minds all day, not like this, having a joyful mind. Second is the joyful mind. Third is the non-violating mind, not violating the teacher's instructions. Whatever intentions the teacher has, whatever thoughts and requirements the teacher has, trying not to violate even the slightest bit. Though this has some difficulty, but trying one's best not to violate fourth seems to be the compliant mind. One must comply with the teacher. When the teacher says up, you say down, insisting on bargaining for a long time. This actually is not very good. Some people deliberately create difficulties for the teacher. Originally, they want to do this thing, but make the teacher suffer for a long time, continuously saying, no, no, no. Keep talking. Only when teacher is particularly disappointed do they slowly agree, making the teacher suffer in the middle for a long time. This is also unnecessary. Fourth is the compliant mind. Then the mind without seeking gain. This is the fifth, having no other interest to seek. Some who want to serve the teacher have their own purposes, their own thoughts, their own other intentions. Not like this, having nothing else, just wholeheartedly serving the teacher. Sixth is the single-minded heart. Perhaps single-minded refers to sincerity. Only the attitude of following the teacher. Nothing else beyond that. Seventh is the same merit mind. The same merit doing any virtuous deeds with the teacher, as Patrul Rinpoche taught in the words of my perfect teacher, even the slightest bit if one makes aspirations together with the teacher. The merit is also shared, so it's the same merit. Mind eighth is the same aspiration mind, common aspiration power. When the teacher does anything, you should make aspirations together with him. Ninth is the Tathagata mind regarding the teacher as Tathagata. 10th is the mind of perfecting activities together with the teacher, commonly perfecting the vast activities of Dharma propagation and benefiting beings' behavior and attitude. Roughly like this, there are 10 kinds of minds in the process of following a teacher. Just now, this also mentioned following with 10 kinds of minds. In the fourth point, just mentioned, it talks about following teachings and acting accordingly. Any teaching spoken by the teacher, obeying completely, putting oneself aside. Don't manage too much for oneself at this time. One's many demands and many personal matters cannot be mixed in. Such a person, solely relying on devotion and reverent faith toward the teacher, will definitely attain liberation. The several points mentioned above, if you don't have particularly excessive demands and wholeheartedly want to work for the teacher, then in this way, solely relying on such devotion and faith, one can also attain liberation. the treasury of precious qualities, also states this way, donning great armor of diligence, wisdom extremely firm, not sparing body and life to serve, carefully following the teacher's commands, not protecting oneself, not constantly protecting and putting oneself in the primary position and putting the teacher in a secondary position, abandoning many things. It's not like this. Actually, when truly following spiritual friends, many people are not particularly concerned about themselves. Previously, His Holiness. Jigme Phuntsok also often mentioned our former old manager, Manager Sodern. The teacher often said in class, "Whatever I say, he will listen. He often doesn't think about himself. Some, including some Khenpos, think about themselves. Will others look down on me? Will some of my affairs have some losses?" and so forth. Thinking back and forth, having many concerns and anxieties, but that manager just mentioned basically whatever the teacher said, he would immediately start handling. So in our usual discussion process, we were relatively careful in front of him. Why? Because every time in meetings or private discussions, if Dharma King asked afterwards, he would directly report whatever anyone said. Later, everyone became quite worried about whether he would tell on us. He himself also felt, you all need to be careful when speaking. In a while, if Dharma King asks, I must speak everything straightforwardly. At the beginning of meetings and discussions, he would first say this. After saying this, everyone didn't dare to speak up because after a while, everything would be reported. So in our process of following, actually now recalling, there were indeed many improper aspects. There were improper aspects and many places worthy of confession. In some places, as we look back now, we feel that in such particularly harsh environments at that time, it was not a very complex society. At that time, we can say our economy and all aspects were not as developed as now. In this way, it was following in a kind of ascetic life. So directly or indirectly, we still learned quite a lot from the requirements in sutras and treatises. Sometimes I also feel that in the process of following, there's a slight sense of gratification, a kind of happiness. Regardless, if one abandons oneself and wholeheartedly accomplishes the teacher's activities with such reverence and faith, one also attains liberation through reverence and faith alone. His Holiness. Jigme Phuntsok often quoted this verse, requiring disciples in the process of following spiritual friends to definitely abandon all self-interest and definitely follow teachings. Following teachings is not just for 1 or 2 days. The longer the time, the better. The longer the time of following spiritual friends, the better. But now, in this degenerate age, many people follow for short periods, today and tomorrow, then seek others again. This is also not impossible. But according to principle, many great masters from before, from their biographies, we see their time of following was very long, so following through obedience to teachings is very important. Previously, one evening, Venerable Gampopa wanted to go to his teacher to request a profound instruction. At dusk, he went to Venerable Milarepa, asking the teacher, among all the accumulations of merit and virtue, which virtue is the most excellent and supreme. Venerable Milarepa said the Guhya Samaja Tantra and Vajra 4-seat unanimously state, making offerings to all Buddhas of the 3 times is not as good as offering to 1 hairpore of the teacher. He quoted this scriptural proof saying, the merit of making offerings to all Buddhas of the 3 times is not as good as offering to 1 hairpore of the teacher. So making offerings to the teacher is the greatest merit and also the best method for accumulating merit. Later, Gampopa asked repeatedly, is there any merit more important and greater than this? The teacher said, as for greater merit, actually greater than making offerings is following the teachings. According to the teacher's pith, instructions, practicing properly and authentically, this merit is greater. So sometimes, when we carefully contemplate these Vajra words, there are very profound meanings within them. In our own process of following, can we achieve obedience to teachings? Sometimes I'm quite ashamed. I also have this problem previously, for example, when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok taught the wish-fulfilling treasury or the great chariot commentary on finding rest in the nature of the mind, the words of my perfect teacher. Just when teaching about following spiritual friends during those few days, my attitude was still very good. Basically, I could maintain it for about a month. Oh, the teacher must definitely be regarded as a Buddha. I cannot generate various kinds of conceptual thoughts. Following teachings, I must definitely practice properly and authentically. Then, after a month, I forgot. It seemed like, originally it seemed like somewhere it was said that the teacher is very good. But specifically how, I can't remember many of the principles, so we ordinary beings often have this problem. A teaching cannot be used long-term throughout one's life. For some people, perhaps one teaching throughout their entire life will be used properly and authentically. For example, when hearing about the impermanence of life for these few days, I meditate on the impermanence of life. When will I die? When getting up in the morning, I also think, will I die immediately? Then after a month, the impermanence of life is gone again. This concept is gone again. Why is this? It's because our practice is too poor. Why do we often say that on one hand we need to frequently recharge, meaning listening to teachings? Without listening to teachings, ordinary people's habits, after a period of time one's conceptual thoughts merge with worldly conceptual thoughts. After this, one can never obtain this true mental state. At the same time, we need to practice diligently. If your practice is very good, at a certain point the knowledge you obtain today will never be lost. For example, I regard the teacher as a Buddha, or my attitude of following the teacher's instructions throughout my lifetime will not change. So in terms of practice, everyone must definitely put in effort. As a qualified disciple, there are several other conditions to possess. What are these conditions? One is regarding the teacher as a true Buddha, having great faith. Actually, sometimes regarding the teacher as a true Buddha has difficulties. Sometimes it's not difficult. For example, previously regarding the teacher as a Buddha, it seemed like I couldn't generate that kind of faith. But sometimes thinking, from the teacher's activities, his wisdom, his compassion, from any aspect, the teacher is definitely a Buddha. If not a Buddha, if we're ordinary people, the things the teacher does, we absolutely cannot accomplish. I used to think, every time the teacher held a Pure Land Dharma assembly, tens of thousands of people gathered together, everyone at the same time reciting Amitabha Buddha's name or mantras. Thinking this way, I am after all a Buddhist. I believe that reciting so many Buddha names definitely has such great merit, extremely great merit, and so many people reciting together at the same time, then the teacher is definitely a Buddha. Otherwise, accepting so many sentient beings would be so difficult. Then every time holding a Vajrasattva Dharma assembly, so many people together reciting Vajrasattva mantras, the teacher can accept so many sentient beings, then definitely from the aspect of activities, the teacher is definitely a Buddha. If not a Buddha, where could there be such one person calling for a Dharma assembly, immediately countless thousands and tens of thousands of people, at the same time, everyone together practicing such virtue? Does an ordinary person have such ability? Each of us should think about this. I sometimes think in my heart about helping others, but when thinking about helping, how difficult it is for me to help others. Asking others, can you please listen to teachings? Others also don't listen to teachings, having them take refuge in Buddha. They also don't take refuge. Benefiting sentient beings is so difficult. But with the teacher's slightest action, it immediately spreads throughout the entire world. When Dharma King went abroad at that time, especially, the mentality of people in Western countries sometimes is completely different from people's mentality in Eastern countries, but the teacher's inconceivable blessing power, many people especially liked it. The feeling was because they often see leaders and celebrities, they all look at them with strange eyes, not feeling they're very worthy of respect. But when the teacher came to this country, regardless of men, women, old or young in this country, everyone after meeting generated boundless joy, immediately taking refuge and practicing his true Dharma. In this way, these people from such a simple place, we can also deduce the teacher's activities are different from ordinary people's activities. The teacher should be a Buddha. I think this can be understood through reasoning. Regarding the teacher as a Buddha is not very difficult. Understanding the teacher's skillful means and secret intentions. The teacher's skillful means and secret intentions must definitely be known, because the teacher needs to benefit many sentient beings. His speech and behavior definitely have different profound secret meanings. If he only benefited me, he could speak words suitable for me every day, that would be fine. Then behavior suitable for me in front of me, for example. If I particularly like the appearance of a monk, then the teacher every day in front of me would be a particularly proper monk sitting in front of you. If I particularly like meditation, the teacher in front of me every day would be meditating, closing his eyes and thinking nothing. Then every time I see the teacher, I generate faith. What I like is also meditation. The teacher is also meditating. I can regard the teacher as a Buddha, but the sentient beings the teacher benefits are not just one or two, not just a few hundred, but limitless sentient beings, even besides us humans, many non-humans, and many sentient beings we cannot see are also being benefited. In such presence, perhaps we, for example, if I speak about a certain person today, perhaps a certain person hearing it might not find it pleasant, but perhaps this language is of very great benefit to many other sentient beings, even enabling them to attain liberation. So, regardless of which teacher, the teacher's skillful means and secret intentions, we must definitely have to accept. This is called great wisdom. Being able to accept all the true Dharma proclaimed by the teacher, being widely learned, all the Dharma spoken by the teacher must be accepted. Otherwise, listening to teachings in front of the teacher is listening to teachings, but every day looking at novels and other things. Some people are like this. The teacher they follow is one, or what they hear in front of the teacher, but including when the teacher is giving lectures, below they're reading another kind of teaching. Afterwards, they never look at what the teacher taught. I know some Dharma friends have this custom. They never look, just coming to look in the assembly of monastics. Probably among lay practitioners there are also such people. In our academy there are such people, I can swear to this. After he finishes teaching, they fundamentally haven't looked at it. For example, when the words of my perfect teacher is being taught, some people look at it once while it's being taught. After it's finished, they fundamentally don't look at it, don't care about it. There are also such people. According to principle, if one is widely learned for whichever teacher transmits what kind of teaching, at least one should look at it once or twice. Previously, when we followed spiritual friends, basically for whichever teachers transmitted teachings, at least we would look at them once or twice. What was taught today? What is really being said here? What did the teacher teach? How is my understanding? Correlating these two, no matter how busy, every time listening to one or two classes at least, we would look at it once or twice. We always had this custom, but because now it's the 21st century, this is definitely different, showing compassion to those helpless and suffering beings without support or refuge, possessing great compassionate heart. As a true disciple, having great compassion for all sentient beings, respecting the precepts and samaya vows transmitted by the Guru, maintaining pure discipline, body, speech, and mind being peaceful and gentle, having gentle three gates, body, speech, and mind. The physical body, speech, and heart are all relatively gentle, not being particularly crude or stubbornly difficult to tame, not appearing particularly rough, not like this, whether speaking, doing things, or interacting with Dharma friends, everything being particularly rough, the heart being able to accommodate all words and actions of the Guru and Dharma friends, being magnanimous. Just a little touch. What are you touching? What are you looking at? Some people's hearts are too narrow, just lightly touching their clothes. What are you touching? What are you looking at? What's there to look at? I'm not a demon either. What's there for you to look at? Offering all of one's possessions. As I just said, some people don't even dare to look offering all of one's possessions without reservation completely to the Guru, being generous and magnanimous, the mind rarely producing impure discriminating evil thoughts, possessing pure perception, every day observing the faults of the Guru and Dharma friends, doing many good deeds that cannot be seen at all. Actually, a person's mistakes are very easy to see. For example, if someone works for about 10 years doing Dharma propagation and benefiting beings, his discipline is extremely pure, but people may not necessarily see it. Let me give an example. For 10 years, his discipline was extremely pure. and he did a great deal of Dharma propagation and benefiting beings. People may not necessarily publicize that this person is remarkable, but if once in one occasion he smokes a cigarette, then this way, what was originally just about a 1-minute matter, then everyone says, "Wow, look at him smoking." So people's eyes for seeing faults are particularly sharp. The eyes for seeing merit basically cannot see anything. No matter how great the Dharma propagation and benefiting beings work a person does, everyone feels it doesn't matter. This is his own business. So generally speaking, whether toward the Guru or Dharma friends, one should not have many evil thoughts and discriminating thoughts. If there are, one should observe that one's own mind is impure. If one creates negative karma, immediately think that my such evil conduct will certainly receive humiliation from great masters and noble beings. Therefore, one should possess a sense of shame. Actually, shame is very important. It's also mentioned in the Ekottara Agama. Knowing shame and having conscience are actually two great merits. If a person has no sense of shame, all morality in our entire world would be in chaos. For example, wives and husbands, children and parents, or our entire human race, all have different levels. Parents have parental behavior, children have children's behavior. In the world, brothers and sisters have their behavior. If we have no sense of shame, we would all be like cattle and sheep, no different from animal groups. This has already been explained in the Ekottara Agama. It's also mentioned in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra. Previously, there was a person whose house seemed to have caught fire. The clothes outside were all burned. Originally, if he came out naked, he should have escaped this fire disaster, but he was a person with great sense of shame, so for him to come out naked in front of everyone would be particularly inappropriate. Then in the flames, not wanting to come out, he died. After death, Buddha said he obtained the position of heavenly king in the celestial realm for many tens of thousands of years, and later when he came to the human world, he was also a universal monarch. So the merit of knowing shame and having conscience is very great, but current society is not like this. I heard that in Taiwan, America, and including China. Now it's quite popular. If one comes out naked, people all welcome it very much, and they themselves feel this is very successful. A celebrity said, "As long as I become famous, that's fine. Everything else doesn't matter. Whether there are clothes or no clothes, it's all the same." If one has a sense of shame, in the process of relying on the Guru, one will also have a sense of restraint. If a person has no sense of shame, then it doesn't matter. The Guru is no different from me. Now, many people believe in excessive democracy and equality. How do they speak? Teachers and students are the same. Gurus and disciples are the same. Fathers and sons are the same. In this way, all social morality becomes chaotic. This is a particularly dangerous kind of ethics. So we have also explained here that having a sense of shame is very important. We must possess these excellent qualities to rely on spiritual teachers. The Treasury of Precious Qualities also says this: possessing faith, wisdom, learning, great compassion, respect for precepts, and gentle 3 gates, being magnanimous, generous, having pure perception, and shame. Furthermore, as a Buddhist disciple, as a disciple of a guru, at all times one's actions should accord with the guru's intentions. One absolutely cannot do things that go against the guru's wishes. One must strictly guard against this. No matter how severely the guru scolds or punishes, one can neither become furious nor bear grudges, just like a tamed fine horse. A tamed fine horse, no matter how harshly the master beats it with a whip, this fine horse's mentality will not have resentment toward him. For example, with wild dogs or other animals, including cats. If you beat them harshly, they instead roar and prepare to bite you. But fine horses are completely different. If the master beats it every day with a whip or other things, it's like a great practitioner. So as a true disciple, one cannot let the guru scold just a little and instead scold the guru back, denouncing severely. Previously there was someone who said, "The guru criticized me. I really want to beat him up severely," due to the guru's assignments and so forth, going back and forth without weariness, like a boat or raft. boats, and rafts going back and forth never get weary, then when the guru instructs to do any task, one will not have this kind of weariness, being able to bear all good and bad things, the guru instructs, like a bridge. On a bridge, all kinds of good people, good things, bad things, all will pass over. The bridge will not be unhappy. Today, I only require good things on top, not bad things. It won't have such requirements. Relying on the guru is also like this, also being able to endure all hardships and difficulties, severe cold and scorching heat like a blacksmith's anvil. Also, regarding all the guru's teachings, obeying completely like a servant. Servants, because they depend on their master, will not have any complaints. Abandoning pride, always staying in a humble position like a broom, giving up arrogance, respecting all beings like a bull with broken horns. A bull with broken horns is often bullied in the herd. So some people say, alas, such and such guru is unfair, the guru bullies me every day. Actually, this is a kind of blessing from the guru to you. You yourself should be like a bull with broken horns. If the guru is often dissatisfied with you, and other Dharma friends are also dissatisfied with you, this is a very good method of practice. In the 80-fascicle Avatamsaka Sutra, I remember there are 21 kinds of minds for how to visualize relying, contemplating the mind of the earth, because the earth can bear whatever is placed on it. These 21 kinds of minds are summarized, and it's also explained in the Compendium of Training, summarized into 9 kinds of minds. One is bearing like the earth, because the earth can bear whatever passes over it. Also, the Vajra mind, the Iron Ring Mountains mind, then the servant mind, the mind of one who removes filth, removing some defilements, and the vehicle mind, then like a domestic dog. Also boats, filial child, 9 kinds of minds, using this kind of mentality to rely on spiritual teachers. So actually, if one truly relies in front of a guru, having a respectful mind, joyful mind, without prideful mind. In this way, one should be able to rely well. These are all methods of relying on the guru. As explained in the Flower Ornament Sutra and other Buddhist scriptures, the treasury of precious qualities also says this, extremely protecting the guru with skillful means, not becoming angry when severely scolded, like a fine horse, coming and going without weariness, like a boat or raft, like a bridge, bearing the noble and base, like an anvil, enduring cold and heat, following teachings obediently like a loyal servant, abandoning pride like a broom, giving up arrogance like a bull with broken horns. The methods of relying on teachers as taught in the sutras. These sutras mainly refer to the Flower Ornament Sutra and others. For example, the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma also contains some. There are quite many scriptures about relying on spiritual teachers. The Vinayavastu also explains this. At that time, Venerable Ananda said, relying on spiritual teachers is half of our Buddhism. Later, Buddha said this is the whole thing, the entire content. So, our relying on spiritual teachers, this behavior is particularly important. Moreover, we should please the Guru with 3 kinds of service. Among them, the supreme service is the offering of practice, that is to say, with an indomitable spirit, experiencing ascetic practices, tirelessly practicing all the true Dharma transmitted by the Guru, that is, practicing the true Dharma through ascetic practices. The medium way to please the Guru is service with body, speech, and mind. That is, serving the Guru with one's own body, speech, and mind, providing service to the Guru. Every day doing some work for the Guru. The inferior pleasure is material offerings. That is, generously offering food, necessities, and so forth. Now, some gurus are not very pleased with the former practice and service, but are very pleased with the latter, which is somewhat upside down. Originally, what most pleases the guru is good practice. Then, medium pleasure is serving him. Material offerings are inferior offerings, not considered very good. But some individual disciples also think, oh, I have such and such offerings to the Guru. I am a great patron with material offerings. Then in front of the Guru, they consider themselves the greatest one who pleases the Guru, and the Guru also shows this attitude. Actually, the truly best offering is the offering of practice. Regarding the offering of practice, some people think it's just practicing every day, including some here, whether for other gurus. Some people who volunteer for the guru, I'm very ashamed at year's end. Because I volunteer, I often help and benefit beings a little, but I myself have no offering of practice. So, Guru, please don't be angry with me. Actually, it's not like this. If one helps beings, guides beings, benefits beings, it's explained in the Flower Ornament Sutra. This is the supreme offering, the so-called Dharma offering. Among all offerings, Dharma offering is supreme. What is called Dharma offering? It is the offering of practicing as taught, explaining several offerings. I think many of us should know this. The offering of practicing as taught, the offering of benefiting beings, the offering of guiding beings, the offering of bearing suffering for beings, the offering of diligently cultivating good roots, the offering of not abandoning bodhisattva activities, the offering of not departing from bodhicitta. About 7 are explained. If among these, guiding beings is also a kind of offering, benefiting beings is also an offering, diligently cultivating good roots is also a kind of offering, not abandoning bodhicitta is also a kind of offering. So if we now do some things for beings, actually not abandoning bodhicitta, guiding beings, benefiting beings, bearing suffering for beings, many offerings are included within. Therefore, just reciting a treatise verbally, blah blah blah, and finishing, you also feel this is a great offering to the guru. Then others say, oh, he recites very well. I have no offering at all. People who work for beings every day for 365 days feel very sad in their hearts, but actually it's unnecessary. Doing some things for beings should be what pleases the guru. What pleases all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is working for beings. This is very important. So today I quote scriptural authority, as said in the Treasury of Precious Qualities. If there are material offerings to the guru, respectful service with body and speech, when all these never deteriorate, among the 3 joys, practice is supreme. Among the 3 ways to please the guru, practicing virtue is most important. Among all offerings, this is most important. The Dirghagama also explains that when Buddha finally manifested parinirvana, he went to Kushinagara and lay down under the sala trees, with his head pointing north. Pointing north means a sign that Dharma would flourish in the north in the future. At this time, the sala trees had not yet reached flowering season, but the flowers from above, including sandalwood and blue lotus trees, flowers from many trees naturally fell on Buddha's body. At this time, Venerable Ananda said, this should be the earth gods here, including celestial gods. The best kind of offering to Buddha. Buddha said, this is not called offering, so what is called offering? Buddha said, if someone accepts my Dharma, if someone practices my Dharma, accepting my Dharma, receiving my Dharma, then practicing my Dharma, this is truly offering to me. So sometimes we really think Buddha's kindness to us is particularly great. What method can we use to make offerings? I should now often receive the Dharma and then practice it as much as possible myself. This is the greatest offering to Buddha. The greatest offering to the Guru is also like this. Some people say, alas, my merit is too shallow. Others all make offerings to the guru. I don't even have 1 cent to offer. 1 cent might be fake, they certainly have 1 cent. But this, they might be using a negative expression. But actually 1 cent of material offering to the guru is not very important if one practices properly and realistically before a true spiritual teacher. Perhaps the guru may not necessarily notice, Buddha may not immediately give you some feedback, but actually what all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas or gurus are most pleased with should be this kind of Dharma offering. This method of relying and offering is very good. The Dhammapada also explains if there is a wise person who sees a spiritual teacher, they should make offerings without sparing body and life. So among all our offerings, Dharma offering is very important. Then within Dharma offerings, it's the same as what I just explained. The Dirghagama also explains, if people can receive the Dharma and can practice the Dharma, this is truly called making offerings to the Tathagata. I think this verse is very good. This is truly called making offerings to the Tathagata. This is from the Dirghagama about practicing my Dharma, receiving my Dharma, and practicing my Dharma. Receiving and practicing have some difference. Receiving means, for example, today, in front of the Guru. Listening to teachings anywhere is also receiving Dharma. Or when I read Buddhist sutras and treatises, this is also receiving Dharma. Sometimes we Buddhists now are too ashamed. Why? Look, in Han regions, there's the Tripitaka with so many treatises, generation after generation, all stored in cabinets, never taken out to open inside are many stories and many teachings. So many scriptures of Buddha are all placed there. In our brief human life, we don't even browse through them. I heard that recently. Some individual teachers and Dharma friends here were browsing the Tripitaka very happily. Because our human life is very brief, we should take a look. If we look on the surface, I'm just one person reading books. Actually, I'm receiving the Dharma. After I receive the Dharma, some good things within, I go and practice them. That day when I went to Beijing University, the professor said, when hosting, he heard that Tibetan Buddhism has many good things. So in our Tripitaka, there are also good things, many good things. So these things, we should be worthy of receiving them. If we receive them, this is a kind of repaying kindness to the Tathagata, a kind of offering to Buddha and the Gurus. This is the best offering. So some people always waste time going everywhere to seek donations. I want to make offerings to the Guru, I now. But some such offerings are not necessarily beneficial to the Guru. Instead, they may have some impact on the Guru's reputation and activities. So each person practicing the Dharma properly according to the teachings is the supreme offering. If the karmic conditions are relatively mature, then making some other material offerings and service offerings are all acceptable, so we must clearly understand this priority. Alright, today we'll conclude here.
Om